You feeling stuck lately? Like life's passing you by? Get to know M.A.Y.A.
Acronym My Ambition, Your Ambition.
Reconnect with your dreams, your goals, your ambitions. Find your motivation and start to live the life you desire. Explore the M.A.Y.A. My Ambition, Your Ambition podcast at M.A.Y.A.com.
Namaste, everyone. Welcome to episode 12 of M.A.Y.A. My Ambition, Your Ambition, the podcast that I like to feel that I embrace salient topics that cover everything from health, wealth, fitness, everything. Everything is going to help you be the best version of yourself, because my ambition, your ambition, that's what it's all about, is achieving that best version of yourself. Hence, we finally got to that episode that's going to be like the wraparound to everything that we talked about. So if you're a first-time listener to M.A.Y.A., My Ambition, Your Ambition, welcome. Buckle up for safety. And if you're a returning listener, well, I'm so glad you stayed with me through this journey. And one of the things I say, whether you are new or returning, is that though there are 12 podcasts, it is absolutely paramount that you work at your pace with the information that I share. I like to say I am your friendly neighborhood counselor, so to speak. This is always intimate conversations, real life information you can use for yourself and with others as well. And sometimes it may help you take that big step forward if you're like, what I'm getting from those episodes of M.A.Y.A. make me feel like maybe I should sit down and speak with a counselor or therapist about some things that I am being challenged with. So if it sparks that kind of motivation for you to take a bigger self because you don't feel like you can do the work on your own, there's nothing wrong with that. Whatever it takes to get to the best version of yourself. So with that being said, of course, I always say, make sure you find a spot that's quiet and comfortable, because this is I got to say a nice, kind of intimate 45 minutes where we connect on what I feel is some really important information. It's about you. So I want this to be you time and a space, your favorite chair, couch. It's summer, so patio, grab your beverage of choice. It's early coffee, tea. I'm not one to judge, so you do what you like. To me, I'm actually doing my ketogenic coffee, so to speak, and my White Sox cup, by the way. My White Sox are in first place. For those of you who know me, I am a baseball enthusiast. And I'm going to kind of, through the show, probably finish this and then move on to my protein shake, because it's part of the best version of me is being healthy, and these two things kind of fall in line with that. Of course, if you are new to the show, and I'll just remind you, if you're not, you can always find the previous episodes of M.A.Y.A. at M.A.Y.A.com. Don't be shy, go there, and you can listen to all episodes there. The key thing as well is that with most of these episodes, there are going to be companion resources. So you can always go to M.A.Y.A.com. You then can click on podcast resource tab, go to the episode, and anything I've shared in regards to information I think that could help to you work through this episode. Resources I've used to, research and to kind of construct the episode, I share with you. So I would always tell you to go ahead to M.A.Y.A.com, go to podcast resources, and do some additional reading and add that to things that are going to be part of your toolbox, as I say. A show I used to do was called Break Up With Them to Make Up With You. And I said, you've got to have a personal toolbox. And everything we talked about in every episode is something you can put in your personal toolbox that's going to help you to get to being to that best version of yourself. Now, of course, I'm not selfish. If you happen to be a person that you have a podcast platform that you prefer, lots of P's in that, podcast platform that you prefer, so be it. You can also find me on iTunes, Google, and Amazon soon, hopefully, as well as iHeartRadio. So, and I'm on Podchasers and so many others, but those are key ones I know a lot of people tend to listen to, so you can find me there as well. So, with that being said, we've done the housekeeping items before we jump into our episode of how you can listen, as well as, how you should be working through episodes as well. Let's get into episode 12. And it's interesting because to me, everything about episode 12, every other 11 episodes were pretty much giving you the tools to be able to create that blueprint. So episode 12 is affectionately called, for me, The Designing of the Blueprint to the Best Version of You. Yes, this is what we've been working to. And if you remotely paid attention to me in most of my conversations, I've been consistently talking about getting to the best version of you. It's pulling back that veil of self-doubt and self-sabotage that we so frequently do in our lives that keeps us from honestly achieving the things that we really want to, getting to that happiness. And the 11 episodes up into this really were great groundwork. I'm a big fan of episode 11 about emotional intelligence because I think if you don't walk away with anything else I've ever shared with you about anything, that is the one episode. If it's a takeaway, that's the one thing I want you to walk away with from M.A.Y.A, is understanding and beginning to work on your own emotional intelligence, because it will make every aspect of your life, emotionally, mentally, physically, financially, spiritually, it will enrich all those aspects of your life when you have good, not a big fan of, but great emotional intelligence. What's one of my sayings I always steal from people? Good is the enemy of great, because sometimes good means you get comfortable. You don't strive for more. And it can be the self-sabotage that keeps you from getting to the better version of yourself. Because you know what? When we're comfortable, we tend not to want to get out of our comfort zones. And growth only really happens when you're challenged and you have to step outside your comfort zone. That'll be a different episode, though. Like, what does your comfort zone look like? And how can you get out of it and make things work to your advantage? That'll be episode, how about 13? Because if we're talking about the best version of you, comfort zones has got to be something we got to push on a little bit as well. So let's talk what the best version of you entails. So when we talk about versions of you, like everything has a version. If you're like a technology person and you use, like, let's say Microsoft Word, phones, every phone is a new version of its former self and it builds upon. So the concept of the best version of you is something you see consistently in everyday life. A new car comes out, guess what? This is the new version of this car. And we've made these upgrades and these changes, and this is why it's better. It's always seeking to become something better than what you were before, but never saying that what you were in the past wasn't good enough. So don't confuse the conversation. That's one of the things about the best version of you I want people to understand. It's about embracing all of you, the good, the bad, and the ugly, to turn it all into something absolutely magnificent. So when we talk about that best version of you, what that entails is that emotional, mental, financial, physical, and for many people, spiritual domains. I am not one to tell you that you have to be spiritual or you don't. That is not my place to tell you that. That's part of the best version of you. If that is something you connect with, that spirituality, whether it's something that's truly built in, maybe a religion that you practice, or maybe you're a person that says, I'm just kind of more in tune to being in a spiritual space. I believe in a higher being. I'm an individual that practices Buddhism. I'm not a Buddhist because I don't feel I've earned the right to say that yet. But the principles of Buddhism totally work for me. It's a philosophy and actually not a religion, just so you know, and you probably already do. So when I say spirituality, I don't want anyone to feel like what I'm inserting is, it has to be part of who you feel the best version of you is. That is something you'll do through process of elimination. But those are all areas that, as you improve those areas of you, you will see that you are becoming more of what it is that you seek to be. Before we jump into the best version, I want you to look into your toolbox that you should bring with you every episode, which means all the work you've been doing in the previous episodes. You've been kind of creating this mental toolbox, and you're taking all these great tools about self-assessments, learning about your communication style, your attachment styles, and you've been learning these things and putting this in this toolbox. Well, as I said about this particular episode, I want to say that emotional intelligence is one of the most important tools you're going to have in anything you're doing through this process. So remember, emotional intelligence refers to your ability to perceive, control, and evaluate emotions, how it impacts you, how it impacts others. So it's not just being in tune with yourself, it's being in tune into the world around you. That was episode 11, and it's so worth listening to. Like I said, if there's only one episode I could tell you I want to be the one episode that you absolutely dig your teeth into and take something from, it's going to be that particular episode, because it leads to so many things. So open up your toolbox right now. I don't care where you're at in your level of emotional intelligence. Remember, there was actually a resource. If you go to MAYACAI.com, podcast resource section, go to episode 11. There's actually a small self-test you can take to kind of see where you are in your emotional intelligence, to see where you might need to improve to get to that better version of yourself, because that's what we're pushing towards constantly all the time. So take that out your toolbox and put that on the table next to you. Alrighty. So let's dig into, I said, what goes into the best version of you? And there's going to be so many different things you can look into for that. In this particular episode, we want to think about this as designing your blueprint and what's required. There's elements that are going to be needed to build that best version of you. And we're going to talk about those different elements. There's about 10 of them that I kind of pinpointed. But honestly, I could have come up with 25. But I thought, you know what? I want to make this manageable. I want to make this something that a person can say, this week, I'm working on this. It's part of the best version of myself. And you could say over a 10-week period, that you're working on each one of these things as building blocks to be a better you. Or you could say, I'm working on every single one of these consistently every single week. Because the thing about it is, right now, our current situation, we're being challenged. And finding and striking balance to get to the best version of yourself in today's times is very, very challenging. If it wasn't the pandemic, that definitely pushed us out of our 3 Cs, remember? Comfort, control, and convenience. That totally got upended for all of us, and it pushed it out of our comfort zone. And the difference is most people didn't know what to do with it. We've had a very high level of depression and anxiety currently because of the pandemic, as well as suicide. And unfortunately, this is all tied to many people have so much on their plate. Trust me, investing in themselves is usually like the lowest on their rung of priorities. And the thing that I want you to get used to thinking about is I want it to be top priority. Because when you are in a good emotional and mental space, even if it's not perfect, financial and physical space, you navigate your situations better because you are connected to you. And that's what's key. When you are connected to you, connecting to others is so different, and the experience, I'm going to tell you something, can be so much richer, or here's one more important, or not as devastating. Because at the core of who you are, you understand what you want, but more importantly, what you need to go beyond just surviving in this world, but thriving to a place where you're really, truly happy. I know. So right now we are in very challenging times, but I'm hoping through M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition, that you can learn how to prepare, and if nothing else, position yourself to deal with adversity. I personally feel that the best version of me comes out of adversity. What do I say? If it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you. And I'm going to tell you something. If you don't come out of this current situation with the pandemic changed in some way, I'd say you probably have, you just don't know exactly where it is. Let's figure it out. But on top of the pandemic that's challenging us, we're being challenged at not just economic, financial areas and emotional and mental areas. We're also being challenged in cultural and social areas there's a new awakening in this country and around the world for social justice. And it's gotten really uncomfortable. A lot of people had to look in the mirror and see some things about themselves they don't like. Some people refuse to look in the mirror to see some things that they don't like. Some people refuse to look around us and say, there's a lot of things that need to be fixed here, and this isn't a one-sided deal. So we've yet to have the conversations about real change that need to happen. I'm real firm on this. I'm going to tell you. I'm perfectly fine with protests, but I'm going to tell you, if you know anything about history, and I'm a student of history, I don't care if you go back to antiquity. Change does not happen until certain things are put in place that are proactive. So anything that's happened with change, I'm going to tell you this. The civil rights movement didn't end because of just protest. Protest along with partnerships and challenging established systems and putting legislation into place, which led to the Civil Rights Act, is where we see change. Ending of slavery, those were acts. Understand, within our respective culture, law is what drives change. And when we won't see economic change in our country, until we say, okay, I'm about to put down the sign. I need some laws written out that we need a better distribution of wealth throughout our country. I understand we're a capitalistic society, which means an open, free market, but it doesn't mean that people should ever have to live in poverty. There should be equal access to health, education, career. Things should not be limited because of what you look like or who you are. So, to me, those conversations haven't even begun yet, because I think we're still working through the anger stage. But I can't sit in that stage. Matter of fact, I couldn't even get immersed in it because I'm not surprised by where we are in our country. So for me, I was very prepared to deal with the adversity and the challenges that have presented themselves because I am connected with me. Hence, I am connected to the world around me. And episode back, I talk about your communal rafts and your personal life rafts, having people within your respective circle that become part of your growth cycle and can be support mechanisms when you need it. And the question is, are you also that for someone else? Those are all things I have always been doing. So when I get between a rock and a hard place, the only thing I have to check myself before I wreck myself, because I like to sing. So that's song 1. I give you 5 an episode, probably. is I say, Maya, your shortcoming and your secure attachment style is you really have a hard time leaning into people. I have a hard time asking people for help. And because I identified that was my shortcoming, it's always been a thing I work on. So when I see I'm getting a little dicey, I check myself so then I won't wreck myself. Okay. But that's part of my blueprint of getting to the better version of myself. Okay. So before we talk about those 10 things that are going to help you to design that blueprint, we have one more toolbox thing that we need to do. I always want you to keep note or copies of your old self or areas you have improved in. And I say that because there's this thought that as you're improving, that you should kind of do away and the old version of yourself doesn't matter. To me, the best version of yourself does not really mean, and you'll see in some of the resources I share, they might kind of allude to the fact that you're shedding the old you to get to the new you. Okay, snakes do that. It's like, if you know anything about snakes, like they shed an outer skin every season as they kind of grow and change. But butterflies, they cocoon. It's a one-time deal with them. They're caterpillars, and they have this magnificent change. And I think as humans, we're very much like that, but we're far more complex because our changes, we eventually have physical changes we see throughout our lives, the lifespan. So you're born into this world, and how you're born is not how you leave this world. We mature, we change, and we age over time. And that same thing happens, obviously, with our emotions as well as our cognitive abilities. So we are always changing, even if we don't want to. It's funny when I hear people who fight change. I kind of look at them and say, I don't know what to tell you, because it's going to happen whether you like it or not. So you can choose to embrace it, celebrate it, and make the most of it, or keep fighting it and doing things that aren't going to really change it. So for instance, I'm one of those women, I'm 48, and I think I'm holding on pretty damn good for 48, to tell you the truth. I don't have an issue with telling people my age. And people were like, oh, women don't want to tell their age. I said, that's an old wives' tale. And that's something that someone construed to create some type of insecurity that women don't need to have. Now, mind you, there within our respective society is a love affair with youth. Hence, there are industries, billion-dollar industries that make money off of our insecurities. The fact of, you know what, you want to have flawless skin. I have to say, I think I have magnificent skin, and I give it all to genetics. My parents look fantastic for their age. But at the flip, on the same side of that, if I had lived a hard and fast life and been rough on myself, I may not have benefited from my genetics. But I also physically take care of myself. I drink lots of water. I'm very aware of things. As you become an old lady, your estrogen drops, your collagen production drops, and hence that's where you start getting like lovely little wrinkles like my forehead right here. But more than that, I start complimenting the things that I was losing over time, just to say, okay, by the way, those things I mentioned do more than just what I said. It's everything from bone health, joint health, all kinds of things. So the reason why you would want to make sure you stay on top of yourself physically, because as your body matures and ages, it does stop producing certain things at certain levels that actually are good and you can supplement, and it's a healthy thing. So billion-dollar industries are built on the fact that people are so afraid of aging. But aging to me is a magnificent thing, because as I've gotten older, how I've grown emotionally, mentally, and even financially is a stark change. But there's still pieces of the old me here. You never really fully change 100% in who you are. You grow, and I like to say it's more of a continuation of yourself. The best version of you is you learn something from the old version of yourself that you needed to improve upon. But if there wasn't that deficiency in that old version, if there wasn't that challenge, then you wouldn't know you needed to improve. This is why the old version of yourself always will have value, because you should never forget where you came from. Like, yeah, I used to be financially sloppy. Not me necessarily, but I wasn't always as financially astute as I should be. And I have a whole different mindset. And I thrived in the pandemic financially. I was one of those people that was blessed to still be in work, challenging work, because I work in mental health. I'm a crisis intervention specialist in an emergency department. So I saw a lot of stuff. But I was still lucky to go to work every day and bring home a paycheck. So I never struggled financially. So I said, because I was given the opportunity where I could help people, I did. But also, I looked at all the money I wasn't spending because of the fact that the pandemic limited what we could do. And so you know what I did? Pretty much eliminated most of my debt outside of student loans that are going to probably stay with me for like a little bit of time, so to speak. I'm currently working on my PhD. So I expect me and my debt is going to be there a bit. But I made a financial shift and said, I really don't want any more student loans. I want to pay for my PhD out of pocket as much as I can, or find other resources that are going to help me do that. And that's one of my goals. But I'm trying to totally eliminate my debt. And pretty much by the end of the year, that's where I'm going to be. So my mindset of, I was presented a challenge of, I can't socialize with people. I can't spend money on unnecessary things, but I can spend it to make me be in a better financial place. This is why I said it's so important to do a temperature check of where you are right now in this situation. Because I guarantee you can grow and thrive in some way that you never thought you could. But we're going to start to have on some guests who are going to talk about physical and financial things, because even though that's something I feel comfortable talking about, I think every now and then you probably get sick of only hearing me talk for 45 minutes, even though I hope I give you good information. Okay. So remember, in your toolbox, nicely labeled in an envelope, make sure you keep copies of notes of your old self, areas where you have improved so you don't forget. And when you start taking steps back or regressing, you can remind yourself, oh, this is about to compromise all that hard work I did. I didn't lose those 20 pounds. And I've actually lost 32 in the pandemic by working out and changing my diet. Just to go back because I can go buy more things and stuffing my face. No, I worked hard to do it. So keep those old versions of yourself to keep yourself in check. Okay? So let's talk about 10 elements of designing the best version of you. 10 things that you can focus on that are going to help you to really achieve the better version of yourself. Now, in designing yourself, I think it's important that you did a little self-assessment. This is important to know what it is that you need to improve upon. So if you know financially you're not in a good space, then you know you've got some work to do. Whether it's the money you make, how you spend your money, how you save your money, are you renting versus owning? There's lots of different things to consider. So if you know this is an area where you need to work, then you say, I need some financial growth and change. Okay, let's say physically. If you're physically not healthy with the way that you're happy with the way that you look, there's no reason why you can't change that. I always tell people about physicality, and here's a thing that's super important. And this doesn't just plague women, fellas. You guys have this probably a little bit of wavering self-confidence. The thing about the physical side, which we can often get kind of masked under the concept of beauty. The big thing about the best version of yourself is embracing your beauty. And that was something I learned really young. And I'm not saying the way I went about learning it was right. I had a very underlying complex with, not a complex, I just felt a little insecure. It never stopped me from thriving. That's what's weird. And my mother was so nurturing that I can honestly say, I think I noticed more how people responded to her versus me. So I have an aunt who's 5 years older than me, my mom's sister. Very light complected, green eyes. And within our respective society, especially within our culture, being Black culture, and so also Latino, because that's part of my background as well, we have an issue with colorism. We know it. We may not want to acknowledge it. This is why we have the things like being Black is in and not being dark skin's in, because that's our way of trying to tell ourselves to get over the fact that a lot of social cues have really polluted our minds. It's not that I didn't think I was beautiful, but I looked at how people responded to her, and I thought that was interesting. So I also started to notice as I matured how people responded to women in general. And I just didn't like the idea of how beauty was so controlling for women. So I've kind of fell back on what was for me something that I could, is the fact that I'm really intelligent. I actually have a very good IQ. Not bragging, okay, but I'm kind of bragging. I'm kind of surprised. I'm very, very proud of my big brain, so to speak. And for me, I've always led with that. I've always been about intelligence. And the minute someone would talk about being pretty, I was like, that's nice, but I'm smart. Okay. And some people would look at me like I was nuts at times. I've run from the idea of being beautiful for a long time. Even saying that kind of makes me feel a little uncomfortable. And I constantly struggle with compliments. That's an area I'm working on. But at the same time, it's an amazing thing and it does feel good. It just makes me a little uneasy, especially when people get very specific about compliments. If you're watching the show, about curly hair. So when people be like, oh my God, you have such beautiful hair, or they say the dirty word to me, the dirty phrase is good hair, I get bent out of shape with that comment. I don't like it. Because I'm like, I believe that Black hair is beautiful. I don't care if it's coarse. I don't care what it's like. So I don't like when people say that. People will say, oh my God, you've got beautiful eyes. I'm like, oh, okay, thank you. I get uncomfortable. I do think I'm an attractive woman. Just compliments are something I struggle with. Because I always feel like, oh, okay, but I'm smart. I had to find that space to learn to acknowledge, one, that it made me uncomfortable, begin to understand why I was uncomfortable, and address how to do better with it. And I've done better with it. I've learned how to accept compliments now. Say, oh, thank you. That makes me a little kind of uncomfortable with people who know me. I said, but thank you. I appreciate it. And I appreciate it even more when I lost my weight through the pandemic because I worked hard. I changed my diet, which I was already doing before the pandemic, but I really went on this huge workout kick. And the thing is, everything changed, my clothes, and people noticed. And I have to say, when they said, man, you look really good, I was like, thank you. And the thing is, I felt good. I felt better physically, emotionally, and mentally just from losing the weight. What I learned a long time ago, and this long thing about M.A.Y.A, and I think it's important that I share my journey so you can reflect on your journey as well, is I stopped comparing myself to other people about beauty a long time ago. Because I was like, there are women out here that blow the doors off the idea of beauty. I can't hold a candle to them, but I have my own kind of beauty. And I always tell people, embrace you and work the best version of yourself. So whatever it is that you have that makes you beautiful, that's what you should extenuate and not worry about what somebody else had. But again, we live in a society where all we see is constantly people kind of bombarding us with these ideas of what beauty is. Now, mind you, there seems to be a little bit of, I think, social and cultural responsibility where we're seeing a shift. We're seeing a shift in natural hair and seeing more people wear it, and I love it. We're seeing more of a shift of seeing women with curves and maybe women who are not necessarily bone thin. You're seeing it in advertisements, and I think that's wonderful. As a young girl, you need to see a variation in beauty because when you don't, and if you don't have someone who's helping you to embrace who you are, and I was lucky that I did, it can be very confusing, and you can feel very not good enough. You can have poor self-esteem because you don't feel like you measure up to others. Everything about the best version of yourself, remember, it's about working to your advantage, not the idea of what others are. It's improving what you have to be the best of what that is, not the best of what someone else is. We're not trying to emulate others. We are trying to cultivate and grow ourselves. And that's what's important about the best version of you. So the objective in designing the best version of you, key things, remember, be yourself, have courage, have confidence, take calculated risk if it's worth it for you. Improve yourself daily. Every day you wake up. I love the Peloton commercial. We didn't wake up for mediocrity. No, we did not. Remember, good is the enemy of great. And know what you want and go after it. Go get it. Don't settle. And if it can't happen today, it doesn't mean it can't happen tomorrow. You might just have to work a little bit harder to get to it. So remember, that's the objective about designing the best version of yourself. Okay, so let's jump into those 10 things. Okay, be confident. It's right out the gates. It's pretty straightforward. When we talk about being confident, it means not being afraid to be yourself. Be you, do you. And if it's a little different, it's okay. I always tell people, I know I walk to a different beat. I know I'm a little different. And I know it. And I've been that way since I was a child. I'm an only child, so to speak. I come from a single parent home. My parents didn't get married, met in college, but I have two great parents that were part of my life. I said they were probably a great example of co-parenting because I think they struck great balance in how they raised me. With that being said, I always knew I was a little different as a kid. First of all, I was a tomboy. I'm pretty sure you look at me and know that. So I was always like, rough, tough, and tumble. That was M.A.Y.A. And I'm short. I'm 5'1". So I was like real little. I had a growth spurt that was 5'1". That was it. And it stopped. But I always knew I was different. But the key thing was I felt very confident. And the difference for me also came from the fact that my parents put me in private school. So I was always a minority. I was always the one that was different. But the thing is, I embraced my difference. And I didn't feel the need to be like my peers. The only time I felt challenged, and it was interesting, and my mother, I think, could sense it, is all my peers who were predominantly white were thin. And being I'm Black and Latino, I'm thick, I had thighs, hips, a butt. So I was always bigger than my peers, but not fat. That's the funny thing. But I struggled with that because I was like, I'd look at them and I'd look at me. But then when I started to see more things like me, that totally eased. And that's what's so important about the best version of yourself. When I say be confident in you. Don't be confident in what someone else is. Don't be confident that what somebody else has is better than what you can be. And that's a key thing about confidence. Always, always stand tall. Don't be ashamed of who you are. Don't be ashamed of what you have or what you don't have. Appreciate you for that moment that you're in. Because growth always means change is going to happen. Fear is the thing that makes us afraid to be confident. What's the acronym for fear I always share that comes from Pitbull? It has two meanings. Fear, you can face everything and run, or you can face everything and rise. I'm all about facing everything and rising. Because eventually when you run, it's going to chase you. And at some point, it's going to face you. And the thing about this is when you are faced with it, what are you going to do? Are you going to let it consume you? And when fear consumes you, it's game over. Game over when fear consumes you. And I'm talking about when people have major struggles, like we're talking about victims of abuse, have trauma. Fear is one of the biggest things for them to get past. And some of the most amazing people I've met that are survivors of emotional, sexual, and physical trauma have flat out said, when I faced my demon and said, you will not own me anymore, that moment has come and gone. But I allow you to extend the moment with me because I am afraid of you. You've already done your damage. I'm done. It's amazing. I've actually done some counseling with some amazing people and facing their fear demon, whatever the trauma was. And there's big trauma. Big trauma, we call them big T, little t trauma. All trauma is not created equal and is not supposed to be. Your experience is yours. And don't think that you have to. Shared trauma doesn't mean that there's going to be a collaboration with someone. You may understand where they come from, but it doesn't always mean you're on the same page. And people often try to do that, connect trauma. And I'm like, no, their trauma is theirs and your trauma is yours. And you may share something in common, but commonality does not mean that you're compatible. And that's true about a lot of things. Commonality does not mean you're compatible. So fear always seeks to extinguish confidence. It rolls into the next thing, though, about thinking positively. I can't tell you how important that positive thinking really is. If the only thing you take from this episode is let there be an understanding that whenever you fill your mind with the most negative things, nothing good ever comes from that. Another coined phrase I stole from somebody else. Where your focus is, your energy follows. So if your focus is on something negative, you're going to attract negative energy. The law of attraction is something else I think is so true. You ever notice when you change the trajectory of the way you think, when you think positive, when you put positive people in your circle, and all of a sudden you feel like things are changing? You're changing because you changed from being in a septic tank to fresh water. So you can thrive and grow. You gave yourself sunlight. You gave yourself water like a flower and you can grow. But if you continually are immersed in negative people, negative situations, there's no way you can grow that way. Even if you're like the strongest person, eventually it chips away with you. And when you get at your weakest moments, that's when it infiltrates you. That's when it's important to say, you know what? I'm taking some steps back in this process. I need to assess. Interesting point. I'm talking to a potential suitor. Very healthy thing, by the way. Love his attitude. It's the most healthy and vibrant thing. And he has a friend who argues consistently with his significant other, not his wife, his girlfriend. And he seems to think that's the norm. But all they do is argue. And he's talking about actually getting married to this person. And it's interesting that my suitor said, do you think that's going to change when you get married? You're probably going to argue more. He's like, well, yeah. The interesting thing is that that person, for some reason, believes that arguing is a natural part of a relationship. Like all the time, there's going to be disagreements in relationships. Just know this, whether it's with your significant other, your children, your parents, your siblings, coworkers, whatever. Disagreement is natural. We don't see eye to eye about everything. It's how we choose to address. Remember, something else we taught like consistently in episode 10 and 11 is about we're going to stop reacting to things and respond. Remember, that's when I talked about the Rough Riders anthem. Stop, drop, shut them down. This is how that works in thinking. Stop. Don't say a word. Look what's happening in front of you. Check how it's making you feel before you open your mouth and put forth into the world words that you might have to retract because you reacted and you didn't respond. Reacting means you let it out, you didn't give it thought. Respond means you gave it thought, then you gave them a response. Part of good emotional intelligence and being the best version of yourself is stop reacting to situations and people and responding in the way that reflects how you really think and feel beyond the moment. Because in the moment, we can feel many things. Angry, insecure, irritable, compromised, betrayed. And if those are the things you're feeling, which are negative, chances are you're going to respond negatively. Whereas if you step back from a situation and you take your temperature and say, this is making me warm. This is making me feel very anxious. Hence, it means it's something not necessarily good. I'm feeling the anger welling up inside of me right now. I think I need to remove myself from the situation. And that's when you can say, I think I need some fresh air. I'm not feeling good in the moment. I'll be right back. Now, you may be engaging with that person who's real argumentative, who doesn't like that idea, because those kind of people are drawn to heat and conflict. It's like Predator, by the way. One of my favorite movies and one of my favorite sci-fi things is Predator, drawn to heat and conflict. Be mindful, because emotional intelligence means you understand your emotions as well as others. And you're reading that person saying, that person seems really angry right now. And you can say, I don't think we're listening to each other right now, because I feel like this is just an angry moment. And because this conversation means something to you and you mean something to me, I'm going to check out for a minute and we can revisit this. But I'm not going to do this right now, because this is why we always end up saying things that we don't mean to say. Or at least I feel like I say things I don't mean to say. So I'm going to do better this time, and I'm going to go take some fresh air and I'll be back. Let them rant on their own. But then you got that person who wants to follow you sometimes too. And that's when you got to just shut them out and keep going. And hopefully you're not in a situation where it's more volatile than that, where someone gets physical with you. Because if you're in a situation like that, that sounds like a situation you need to remove yourself from, because that's not healthy on any level, emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, on no level. That's abuse. And I know abuse situations are really hard to get out of. But unless you check it first to know how unhealthy it is, sometimes people are emotionally abused and verbally abused and don't even see it that way because they've gotten so accustomed to it. Hence, the person being accustomed to the arguing. Don't be accustomed to things that aren't healthy. So when you think positive, you have a negative radar. It comes spinning around. You're like, oh, here comes that negative storm on my personal Doppler. I can see it coming. I can feel it. I'm about to back up and move away from this. I'm not going to let this rain on my parade right now. This is a storm I'm not trying to engage in with someone. Creating healthy spaces for yourself emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually are really important. Another example before we move to a third piece. Often people will struggle with losing weight when they're around people who have unhealthy lifestyles. And one of the biggest things people will tell you is, boy, I struggled, but I had to maybe stop doing this and being around these people. Or God forbid, if you're in a household and you're trying to be the one healthy person in the house, it's difficult. But people have said, I decided I was going to get my whole family involved. And it was amazing how everything changed, how we all got healthier and we adopted a new lifestyle. So you often hear people, or here's what's interesting. If you ever see that show, My 600-Pound Life, everybody has an enabler. And it's always noted. There's always been an enabler. Do you have someone who enables you from thinking positively? And if you do, why? There's so many layers to have to be evaluated. Okay, so the first was be confident. The second is think positively. And the third is believe strongly in yourself and never give up. This is hard because we live in a world where it's so easy to feel compromised. Especially right now, we have such a socio-cultural climate that reeks negativity. It does. It feels like every couple weeks, something just sad and emotionally debilitating is happening if you're connected to the world around you. Some people aren't disconnected from this, and they're like, this is ridiculous. They don't get it. I do believe there's a certain amount of disconnection you have to do from things to stay healthy. It doesn't mean remove. It just knows when to unplug at times. You have to believe in yourself strongly in the conviction of who you are, because people will challenge you. People will think different than you and try to tell you how you feel is wrong just because it doesn't align with what they want or what they think is right. But when you believe in yourself strongly because you've done the legwork, you've drawn this blueprint up to know what you're trying to achieve and how you're getting there, you don't just give up because somebody tells you, well, that doesn't seem like a good idea. Because then the response can be, well, it doesn't seem like a good idea to you. I have a plan. This plan may not align with you. I'm sorry, but there's something I'm trying to achieve. Now, if you'd like to know more about it, I'm more than willing to share. Now, this can be a complicated conversation if you're talking about a significant other or rearing children, because now your plan is going to have levels to it, and it can't be all self-involved. But when we talk about the better version of yourself, it's about making decisions that are directly about you. So you must believe strongly that this is something that is important, that resonates with you, that you connect to. And when you connect with it, when it resonates with you, when it sits in that right space, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, the physically and financial piece comes along. I'm going to tell you that. When you're in the right mental space, because you really can't do anything positive or be confident unless you're in that right mental space. That's the foundation of all this. And that emotional piece. They're hand in hand. As you think, you feel. As you feel, you think. They're kind of like this symbiotic relationship. When you get grounded in those things, you will make better decisions. So just know that. But believe strongly in yourself. and don't give up so easily when people challenge you. Now, here are some things that I would tell you that are fringe things that make a difference in trying to be the better version of yourself. And then you're gonna be like, really? But I thought these things were important to throw in. Dress fashionably and express yourself. And it's more about expressing yourself. Look, by no means am I a fashionista at all. I went to Catholic school from birth to 12th grade. I wore a uniform. So I think I'm real low on the totem pole with fashion. So I tend to like gravitate towards things that I think, one, are comfortable, two, that look good on me, and are slightly fashionable. I'm not driven by like fashion like some people are. Like, I don't see somebody wearing something and go, oh my God, I want that. That's not me. I tend to be like, oh, I like that. Oh, I like that pattern. Or I like this. Because it seems to resonate with my personality. I really wear things that are reflective of me, not reflective of someone else. And that's a piece I want you to grasp. What is your personal style? What do you want, your dress to express about you? I would tell you that goes in terms of cars. You would see my car and say it's super practical. The only thing I want, and I would say isn't necessarily practical, but it's so reflective of my personality, I'm going to gift myself with a Tesla when I'm done with my PhD. A Tesla is so M.A.Y.A. It's tech savvy, it's smart, it's eco-friendly. I like stuff like that. So a car that's intuitive, and the car is very intuitive, fits with me. But it doesn't mean if you happen to like a BMW or a Mercedes, whatever your love is, I'm not judging it. I'm just saying, put things or incorporate things that express you on the outside that really reflect your personality, and not that thing, fake it till you make it. Because again, to me, that's not being true to where you are at that point in your life. If you're faking it because you haven't made it, it means you have a goal of where you want to achieve, but don't negate and don't take for granted where you are, because where you are right now, remember, becomes an old copy of yourself you're going to put into your toolbox. So don't devalue yourself at any point of your life because you're not the best version of yourself. So when people say fake it till you make it, I'm like, no, don't fake it till you make it. Be you. Be yourself. Strongly believe in yourself. Think positively, because fake it till you make it is being negative. It's not being real. All right, here's one that's big, and I will tell you this off the top. I am a knowledge whore. Knowledge is power. I so wanted to be on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire or Jeopardy so bad, but I'm so afraid I'm going to clam up and answer wrong. Even though I know the right answer, I won't do it. I am always trying to immerse myself in information, and I have grown so much. People will call me, you know why? Because they'll be like, hey, man, I got a question. I'll be like, okay, what? Now, mind you, it'll have nothing to do with my respective position of working in mental health. And I happen to be a sports enthusiast, and I own a sports station, FYI, Sports Zone Chicago. It'll have nothing to do with those things. They'll call and ask me a question about something physically, and I'll be like, or financially, and I'll be like, well, here's what I know about it. But I would strongly recommend you do a bit more research on your own, because this is why I know this. And if it's something you're really truly interested in, commit to learning more about it. And honestly, reading is often how you do it. They always say the best way to hide information and success from people is to put it in print, because people run from it. Print has lost its importance in our respective society. It really, really has. Re-engage yourself in reading. So whether it's you subscribe to the Wall Street Journal, whether you subscribe to some health and fitness publication, I learned more about natural, holistic things just because I started doing the research. So for instance, when I had a hair debacle a couple years ago, where all my hair broke out, this is absolutely brand new hair that I grew in 2 years. It was because of the approach I took about health and wealth and all the things I did to grow my hair out religiously. So I wasn't knowledgeable. I talked to some people, but I educated myself. And this gets into the eating healthy part. Eating healthy foods daily and limiting sugary and processed and unhealthy foods. People, that's the best version of yourself physically. We put a lot of unhealthy things into our body that create major health issues. Rest in peace, Chadwick Boseman, who we found out passed away yesterday on Friday, which was the 28th. Young man, only 43. You may know him from Black Panther. He played Jackie Robinson. He'd done a couple projects. He had colon cancer for 4 years. I didn't realize he was sick. I know he didn't look well, he was thin, but he kept working and doing projects. And I'm not saying he was an unhealthy person, but one of the things in this particular bullet point I want to point out to you is, and so important, is that do your regular checkups, but be healthy, drink more water, get sleep, take multivitamins. Don't cram your body with all these things that are unhealthy, especially if you happen to know you have a family history of hypertension, of diabetes, cancer. If you know these things, and if you don't know these things, you should learn these things, so that being a better version of yourself means taking care of yourself physically. So that means eating healthy, having a healthy diet, getting sleep. It also means number 7, Commit to consistent exercise. Be fit, be healthy. Look your best. When we look our best on the outside, let's be honest, we tend to feel really good and people beam. Let's admit it, when you put on that outfit and you look good, you'll be like, I'm feeling myself. I'm feeling myself. It's that song 3, Beyonce. I can't tell you how much better I feel about myself by losing weight. I have clothes that I put on now, and when I tell you, I'm like, wow, what a difference. This was snug as a bug in a rug, clearly before I had it on. Totally makes a difference. I'm not to a point where I'm going to buy a whole new wardrobe yet, but if I work towards my goal, I'm going to need some different things. And guess what? I have a lot of nice things I can give away to somebody else. But being fit's important, even if it's committing to 30 minutes of brisk exercise a day. You don't have to be a gym rat. I will tell you something I recently discovered, though, that I love is Orange Theory. Plainless, shameless plug for Orange Theory. Love it. It's group fitness. I love group fitness. I can work it on my own and I do it. But if you're a person who struggles with working out by yourself, I would strongly tell you to get into a group fitness class. It'll probably motivate you in a way that you can't motivate yourself. But healthy diet with 6, exercising daily is so important for good health. Mentally and emotionally, there are endorphins that you create when you work out that you cannot create in any other form unless you actually your body's in an anaerobic state. Elevating yourself mentally. And I'm at my best when I work out in the morning. I'm like on fire at least until 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Then I kind of start to die down a bit. But my brain is firing at such a higher level because I work out for 45 minutes to an hour. Either I run or do my group fitness class. I do it early because I found the best time for me to work out is in the morning, not in the evening. These are things you learn about yourself when you're figuring out the best version of yourself. It might be easier for you to do morning. You may not want to get up, but once you get it up and you do it, you'll start to commit to it and you'll love the results you see, but more importantly, how you feel. Here's a big one. Don't worry about other people's BS. Focus on what you enjoy. So for instance, if you don't have someone to work out with, that's okay. You go do it anyways. I happen to love sports. I do a lot of sports, watching on my own. It doesn't mean I have to find people to do it. I love to travel. I now have a best friend who has the same travel bug, but do you know I would travel by myself places? I never let that stop me being willing to live and see the world and enjoy it. You can't be waiting for someone else to come along for you to decide you're going to enjoy your life. Start to enjoy your life with you first. And when you start enjoying it with you, you'll find you'll enjoy it with others in different ways that are far more fulfilling than you ever thought. Here's another one that's key. Work hard and make your own money doing something you enjoy. You hear people say all the time, the best money you make is doing something that you love doing, you're passionate about. That's not always the case. Sometimes what we might enjoy doing may not yield money. So you have to ask yourself a question. Are you comfortable with the money you make because you're happy? Or does making money mean more to you and you're going to suffer? Figure that piece out first. And if it turns out that you need to make money, but what you do doesn't make you happy, then you have to find a way to strike a balance to complement that in some way that you do something that strikes that balance of making happiness that your job doesn't. Because there's nothing worse than those people that are miserable in their jobs and they don't have happiness in any other aspect of their life. Generally speaking, if people aren't happy in their job, but they can come home and there's something else that motivates them and makes them happy, they can go to work because they realize they don't have to be at work maybe for 8 or 12 hours and they can get away and they can leave it. So just find this piece is important. If your job can't be your passion, but money is your passion, strike your balance because eventually you will get burnt out at some point. And number 10, make good decisions and try new things. Before you make decisions, and a lot of decisions can be very highly involved and emotional. I'll give you an example. You want a new car, and you really, for instance, when I bought my car I have now, because I had to buy a new car, I really wanted to buy the Tesla at that time, but I didn't want to spend Tesla money, seriously, because financially I had goals. So I said to myself, and I also want to pay for my PhD. So if I'm spending money on a Tesla, I'm kind of negating 2 really important goals that I have. So I said to myself, that Tesla is something I will get when I'm done with my PhD. What will be fulfilling is that I didn't have to take out a student loan to pay for my PhD because I've now put together ways to pay for this and I won't be in more debt. And then I can go get that Tesla because my debt will look entirely different. Those are good decisions that are based on needs versus just wants. And trying new things. I'm always not afraid to step outside my comfort zone and try new things. Food. I won't go nuts with food. Yeah. But if it's not too off the wall, I will try it. But in regards to, trying different types of music or trying a different vacation spot or going to a different event with somebody. And chances are, I tend to enjoy most things I do because I go into things with an open mind. So when you challenge yourself to try new things, you grow in different ways, and you'll be like, you know something, if maybe I had never done this, I never would have met this person. Or I never would have known that this is something I could do. Or I would have never gotten this resource that was at this particular place that I was never frequenting. So making good decisions and challenging yourself by trying new things are a big part of getting to the best version of yourself. So in summary, everybody, smile, be happy, spread love, don't worry about others, reject negativity, and just focus on doing you. And this is how you'll get to the best version of yourself. Well, everybody, thank you for tuning in to episode 12 of M.A.Y.A, Designing the Blueprint to Get to the Best Version of You. Remember, you can find all former episodes or previous episodes of M.A.Y.A at MA.com. Remember, as many other episodes, this will have a podcast resource section, so you can go there. Just go to MA.com, click on podcast resource, and there it is for episode 12. Some of the things that you can read further into some different things that can challenge you and help you to get on that path in evaluating more things to put into your toolbox for getting to the best version of yourself. But of course, in listening to the podcast, if you have a podcast platform preference, please stick to it. You can find me on iTunes, Google, as well as iHeartRadio. Hopefully soon coming to you, I will be on Amazon Audibles as well. Beyond that, make sure you follow me on social media. _M.A.Y.A_ is on Instagram as well as Twitter, and M.A.Y.A Presents on Facebook. But remember, everything M.A.Y.A is right there on MA.com. Everyone, find something you want to start on Monday to start working towards that best version of you. Ask yourself, what does that entail? And how do I get there? And I'll meet you halfway. Remember, if you have questions, you can always post questions to MA.com as well, and I'll answer. All right, everybody, that's it. Thank you for tuning in. Until episode 13, remember, your present becomes your past. So your future is no more. So live every single day to the fullest. Ciao.
You feeling stuck lately? Like life's passing you by? Get to know M.A.Y.A.
Acronym My Ambition, Your Ambition.
Reconnect with your dreams, your goals, your ambitions. Find your motivation and start to live the life you desire. Explore the M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition podcast at MA.A.com.